Hi, I'm Chelsea, and today I'm going to show you how to take a self-portrait. More specifically, I'm going to show you how to take a professional self-portrait because I think that's a really common thing that people want to do, and you can use the same techniques that I'm showing you towards more creative pictures. In fact, I use these same techniques to take my levitation photo that you may have seen and my glamour shots. You don't need a lot of gear to take a self-portrait. You'll need a camera, a tripod, a remote shutter release, your styling, and an environment. For the remote shutter release, I used this Satechi remote shutter release. I looked it up on Amazon right now. It was only $50. You can find ones that plug into your camera that aren't remote for about $30, and it's a good investment, I think. The first thing that I chose was my background. You want to make sure that it's clean, tidy, and a simple background. You want to make sure that it's well lit, and you also want to make sure that it makes sense with your profession or whatever you're taking your self-portrait for. So if you're a yoga instructor, you might want to be out in a field or have some trees as a background. That might not look so great if you're a CEO. So consider where you want your picture to be taken and what's appropriate for your profession. You also want to make sure that your environment and your background that you're shooting on has enough room for your subject, you, to have some distance from the background so that you can blur it but still have your aperture high enough to get your whole face in focus. The next thing you want to pick out is your outfit and your styling, and it's really important. Even if you have the perfect settings and exposure in your picture, everything's in focus, bad styling can really ruin a picture. Make sure that you look the part. I took an example picture of what it might look like if you didn't dress the part for your professional portrait. I think for everyone, you want to make sure that you look neat and tidy and you don't have wrinkles and that your outfit is appropriate. So once again, if you are a yoga instructor, you're going to have a very different outfit than a manager, let's say, or a real estate agent. So pick out the appropriate clothes. I'm going with a professional shot. I'm going to put it on masonpress.com. And so I wanted to pick a blazer and something that looked officey, and the background that I chose is my own office because it has a nice clean background and it makes sense for the photo. You also want to make sure that you look nice and neat, right? Because you don't want your professional picture to have you with a cowlick or stray hair or blemishes or stubble. So get yourself cleaned up and looking good, and you'll take some test pictures and make sure you look presentable, and you can kind of adjust as you go along. So now that you've chosen your styling and your environment and your clothes, you want to think about the lighting that you're going to be using. So if you're outside, obviously you'll be using the sun for light. So you'll want to find a place with nice, even lighting, the shade, or you could use a diffuser to make sure that you don't have harsh shadows. If you're inside and you're using natural lighting, that presents more of a challenge. You'll have to find a well-lit room with big windows, or you'll have to use a flash or a softbox. If you're using a flash, bounce the light. Nothing looks more unflattering than a direct flash on your face. It makes you look greasy, it brings out all of your imperfections, and it can make some really awful, unflattering shadows on your face. So bounce it up at the ceiling as long as it's white and back down onto yourself. The next challenge that you'll run into when you're taking your pictures is getting your eyes in focus. For that reason, you want to step away from your background or sit away from your background like I did and choose a high f-stop number. So usually you want to choose something low like 1.8 or 2.8, but if you do that, you'll have so little room to guess where your eyes will be in focus. So what I did was I kind of put that number up to 5.6, and I focused on my chair where I was going to be sitting so that I knew where the focal plane was, and then I went and sat in it and used my remote shutter release. And I would try to guess exactly where the focal plane was, and then I'd kind of lean in and out to try to get it exact. If you use that small aperture number, it's going to be a nightmare to try to get your eyes in focus, and you'll end up with just your nose in focus or maybe even your forehead in focus, and that's not very professional. Having a higher aperture number to make sure that more things are in focus might also mean that your background is in focus. For that reason, you have to step away and give yourself some distance from the background. When people are too close to the background, it gives it the mugshot effect, is what I call it. It casts shadows on the wall behind them, and they look uncomfortably and unnaturally close to the wall. So I used my chair as a focusing point, but you can use other things. I've used a wig on a stick before, or a hat on a tripod. There are any number of things that you can use, and then you simply replace that item spot when you're taking your picture of yourself. One problem you might run into when you're using a higher aperture number is that you'll be letting in less light, so your picture might come out a bit darker. You can bump up your ISO quite a bit before things get noisy, so don't be afraid to use ISO 800. As long as your picture is nice and bright, usually noise is in the shadows, so you probably won't notice any noise at all. Now that you have your shutter release and your camera and tripod set up, you focused on something, it's time to take your first picture. So snap your picture, and then the first thing you want to do is look at it. You want to check and make sure that your lighting is correct, that your settings are right. Do you need to add more light to the picture, or do you need to just bump up your aperture? Make sure that you're in focus. Maybe you need to focus on something else. The chair method might not work for you. The wig on a stick might not work for you. Find something that works and make sure you can get your face in focus. Another thing to check for is how you look, appearance-wise. Is the picture aesthetically pleasing? Is there junk in the background? Is your lapel popped up? Check and make sure that everything's in order and take another shot. So I took an example picture of what it looks like if you have an ugly background, and as you can see, it really ruins a picture. Now that you've taken your pictures and you're satisfied with how they look, let's load them onto the computer, and I'll show you how to do some minor editing to make sure that your pictures look professional and clean. Now that you've taken some pictures and you have them uploaded, take a look at them and make sure that they're exposed correctly, they look good, and most of all that they're in focus. So once I uploaded my pictures, I noticed that they were exposed nicely, but my face was just disturbingly out of focus. And so I realized I had to do a few things. I had to increase my f-stop number so that I had a deeper depth of field. So I brought it from 5.6 to 9.5. I needed more light. So I put my flash at full power and bounced it off the ceiling, and I also needed a more accurate way to find my focal point. I was using my chair and then trying to kind of lean into the focal plane, but it really wasn't working, and so I had to find a better way, and that better way is a head on a stick. So these foam heads, it looks really scary. I painted its face because I'm a creep, and they're frightening, but they're really useful, and they only cost $3. I put mine on a light stand because that's what I had laying around, but really if you can find something to prop it up on that's about your height, it's going to work just fine. So the good thing about having a head on a stick is that not only can you make sure that your picture will be in focus, this is perfectly in focus, but you can test out your backgrounds and make sure that your composition is going to be good. So here I put the head on a stick in front of the shears, and here I put it in front of my wallpaper, just kind of experimenting with different backgrounds for my portraits. You can see that we bonded. Don't tell Tony. So after the head on a stick method, increasing my f-stop and adding more light, my pictures became a lot clearer. So that's nice. So once you've imported pictures that you're satisfied with, they're clear and the exposure is right, you have to choose your photo. Now, they may be a little darker than my first set, but that's not really a problem because I can just bump up the exposure once I hit develop here. But our next step is to choose a picture. One thing that I'm keeping in mind is the final resting place of my photo, which is masonpress.com. It's kind of professional, but I still want to seem friendly, so I'm going to kind of go through my pictures and find one that works. I'll start on this picture again. So I'm kind of making sure that I have a good background, a good expression, that the mood of the picture is appropriate, not too solemn, not too cheery. And I also want to make sure that my hair is right. You can see here my necklace has kind of slipped around. You want to look for little things like that and just make sure that it looks clean and professional. And as you go through your pictures, rate them so that you can go back and look at your favorites. So I like my expression in this one, and I think it's pretty nice. So I'm going to give it a 3 and move on to the next. I like this one even more than the last one, so we'll give it a 4, and so on and so forth. So let me just go through these with you, and I'll tell you why I like them and why they might work and why I'm ruling them out. So this one, my hair is a little bit messy, and I'm not sure if that background is going to be a problem, but I like my expression. I look friendly but still professional, so I'm going to give it a 3 and consider it. I like this one a little more. I'm not sure if it's too flirty looking with my hair down, but I still like it, so I'm giving that a 4. This one, I don't like that I'm straddling 2 different backgrounds, the wallpaper and the door, and I kind of look disgusted. I don't look that happy. I don't look approachable, so I'll give that a 2. Same thing here. Oh, I don't even know what that is. I kind of like it. This one's okay as well. I don't know how to feel about the hair. I'll give it a 3. This one I put in there to show an example of how important your expression is. I don't look very confident. I don't look like a person you'd trust or hire, so I'm going to give that a 1. This one, I look very stiff. Nothing's worse than a fake smile. You want to make sure your expression is natural, so that gets a 1. This one is just goofy as heck, so I don't think so. A lot of people go for this pondering pose, like, oh, I'm so deep and thoughtful. I think it looks pretty silly. So that one I will not be considering. This one, I wasn't sure if it's too casual, too friendly, but I think it's nice and I definitely look approachable. So I'm going to consider that one. Oh dear goodness. Oh gosh. I look real weird. Oh, this is an example of one that I thought was too serious. There's nothing really wrong with the photo. My shoulders are square, which is a more aggressive pose, and I just don't look very happy. It's a bit too serious for me, so I'm not going to consider that one. Oh, bad styling. I've gone too far. Okay, so now that I've rated some pictures, I can go into the ones that I liked and start editing them. I'm not going to edit all of them with you because I don't want to bore you to death, but I will choose a few that I like. Let's see. Let's choose this one. And the first thing I'm going to do, let me hit develop here, and I'm going to crop it because like I said, it's going on masonpress.com and I know all of the pictures there are square, so I'm going to do 1:1 and make it square and crop out this board on the right and this door on the left to make the background a little cleaner. There we go. And next I'm going to bring up the exposure because when I raised my f-stop, I let in less light even though I used a flash. And I want this to look bright and clean. I'm going to bring up my shadows a little bit since I have such dark hair and a dark jacket on. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to put up the luminance a little bit. That will just smooth out my skin. Oop. So now that you've done the luminance and your skin looks a little smoother, there are just a few more little things. You can see that I have some flyaways here on coming out of my head. So I'm going to select the adjustment brush here and select the entire background. The whole thing. I'm kind of doing this roughly here, rushing a little bit. But you want to get those flyaways in there too, and the rest of the background because I'm going to blur them out. Let me make this brush smaller and just select right around my head. And then I'm going to reduce the sharpness, and you can see that they just kind of fade away a little bit, and also reduce the clarity a little bit to blur the background even more. Oh, you can also raise the highlights a little bit, or the exposure, whatever works better for you, and just brighten up the background. But one more thing I'm going to do is get rid of this dust on my jacket here, or lint, or whatever it is. Okay. And that looks good to me. I like this one. I'll probably use it. There are a few other pictures that I liked, and I'll go in and edit those too, and then kind of weigh which one I like better based on my edits. But it was really easy and fast, and I think anyone can do it. Thank you so much for watching my self-portrait video. If you liked it, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to check out our book, Stunning Digital Photography. It's the #1 photography book in the world. It's got great ratings, and we also have a DVD series that you can check out at our website, sdpcommunity.com. Thank you.